Avem bolo
Bonjour.
blood. Aha. Awɔ de
No,
bɛn bolo.
the summer is loaded with my names.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, maalaikum salam. I don't know if you could bring them to the attendee section. I think a couple of them log on with my name. I don't know if you can see that, Kate. Yeah.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us at Accessing Tax Exemptions in New York City. This event is available in English or French, which you can access at the bottom of your screen by clicking on whichever language you would like to listen to this event. I am Kate Toth, Executive Director of Bricks and Mortals. We are an interfaith, secular membership organization that provides resources like this, so houses of faith in New York can survive and thrive. Visit our website if you would like to become a member or find more resources, bricksandmortals.org. In addition to Bricks and Mortals, thank you so much to the organizations who helped organize and will be speaking at this event. The Muslim Community Network, the New York City Department of Finance, the Mayor's Center for Faith and Community Partnership, and the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, who provided interpretation services. You can see on your screen the list and order of speakers. Please ask questions as you have them. and our very knowledgeable panelists will answer them at the end. Please put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, not in the chat, so we'll be sure to see them. Presenters will list contact information to follow up and how you can reach them either in the chat or on the screen. I hope you find today's event helpful. Thank you again for being here. Now I'll pass it to Asmahan Malo from the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for that hiccup. Thanks, Kate. As Kate mentioned, my name is Asmahan Malo. I'm an organizer with the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. Our office is dedicated to the issues that impact immigrant New Yorkers, no matter what their immigration status is. In the short time that I have, I'm going to quickly go over some of the services that our office provides, including right now during this pandemic, which is testing and vaccination access for immigrant New Yorkers. So for all those who need to be tested for COVID or still have yet to receive their COVID vaccine, please visit nyc.gov/COVID test. These tests are free and available to immigrant New Yorkers in general, regardless of their immigration status. And the same for vaccines. Please go to vaccinefinder.nyc.gov. Where you'll find community sites. Most importantly, right now in New York City, you can walk into any city-run vaccination site without an appointment and get vaccinated that day. But in general, I know we're short of time. I wanted to make sure that folks know about our office. We want to make sure that you're directly connected to the services and resources that you need. Please visit nyc.gov/immigrant. Where you'll see a list of all of our programming and services, including free legal services for folks who are in desperate need of it through our programming called Action NYC, or get connected to our free city ID, which is available to New Yorkers no matter what their immigration status is. Our website is nyc.gov/immigrant. I'll put that in the chat as well as my contact information. But I'm so glad that I could quickly jump on and make sure that everyone is aware of MOIA and aware that we are here to advocate for you and provide the resource support you need during this time. But that's it for me, and I'll kick it off to Michael.
Please pardon that little technical issue that we had to address just before speaking. Good afternoon. My name is Michael with the New York City Department of Finance, and I'm an outreach liaison. So good to have so many of you gathered today to learn about how you can access property tax exemptions for your nonprofit organization. And there's much to consider today. But before we get into that topic, we just want to mention that there are a number of property tax exemptions that are available, not just for the organizations that are represented, but also individuals that are represented. If you are part of the clergy, of the religious leadership of your organization or your nonprofit. Your personal property too may have availability or may be eligible for property tax exemptions. Just want to share with you briefly a resource from the Department of Finance website. I'm going to share my screen. You should be seeing the Department of Finance website. I'm going to type into the search bar word clergy. And you can see here, it gives me the selection for the information. Where can I get information about the clergy exemption? I'm going to select. On this page, you'll see the information regarding the clergy exemption. And here are the basic requirements. If you are now or ever been a full-time member of the clergy, your property is not a cooperative, the property is not held in a trust, and your primary residence is located in the state of New York, and you are one of the following: either an active clergy member engaged in ministerial work as your principal occupation, a clergy member unable to perform such work due to illness or impairment, and medical documentation is required, a retired clergy member over 70, or the unremarried surviving spouse of a clergy member. You may be eligible for a property tax exemption, which will reduce the assessed value on your property. And then, as a result, your property taxes, as they're calculated, will also be reduced. Generally, it nets out to be worth about $250 in savings over the course of the tax year. So we wanted to make you aware of that. Also, you have the option to select on the website the language that you would like to receive this information or read this information in. At the top, you see a button here that says Translate. By selecting that button and then selecting the language that you'd like to read the information in, you can have it come up in that language. Here, we're showing it in French. And so that page that we just showed you, along with other information, is available in French, as well as many, many other languages. One more thing that we'd like to show you before we conclude is here in this middle section that says Ways to Save. If you select that and then scroll down on this page to where it says Property-Related Benefits and Property Owners, you'll find a chart of 7 different exemptions that you may be eligible for if you are a property owner. And this is for your personal property, your primary residence within the 5 boroughs of New York City. So what we like to conclude with is this. There are many ways to save on property taxes. Please use the Department of Finance website as a resource and tool. But to get assistance with some of the more complex issues, maybe you've applied for an exemption but weren't successful. Perhaps you've tried to appeal or have taken other actions without clarity or success. Our next presenter is from the Office of the Taxpayer Advocate, Marcel Dixon, will explain the benefits or the resources that are available to you from their office. And let me stop sharing my screen.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Mr. Sharp said, my name is Marcel Dixon. I work in the Office of the Taxpayer Advocate. In that office, I am the administrative coordinator, as well as the non-for-profit ombuds person in that office. So today, I just wanted to, give a brief introduction of our office, the Office of the Taxpayer Advocate, and just let folks on this call know how we might be able to assist them when it comes to their DOF matters, right? So with not any further ado, what I'll do is that I'll just share a quick little PowerPoint that I have here, and we can go from there. All right. So a brief introduction to OTA. So this office is a recent office, so we're a little bit nascent, so to speak. The office was established in 2015, the Office of the Taxpayer Advocates. We help New York City residents with their tax issues after they have tried to resolve these issues with Department of Finance on their own. So the office is an independent unit within Department of Finance. The Taxpayer Advocate reports directly to the Commissioner of Finance. So, we're autonomous from the other agencies. So basically that enables us to do, very much good advocacy work without, the limitations of being beholden to another unit or group, right? So we help taxpayers resolve problems with Department of Finance, and OTA can recommend policy changes or request that the Department of Finance take action on the behalf of New York City taxpayers, right? Our office ensures that the taxpayers are treated fairly according to the New York City Taxpayers Bill of Rights, which I have a link on this last page of the slide that Kate will share that you guys could, read those Bill of Rights if you need to, right? So in order to assist taxpayers, OTA has a number of case advocates. So individuals who work on our, cases, rent freeze ombudsperson. So those individuals who might be familiar with the SCREE and DREE program. So these are programs for renters or tenants who live in, rent controlled, rent stabilized apartments, or they might be a owner or a shareholder of a Mitchell-Lama or a HDFC co-op, which might qualify for the rent freeze program, or some of the exemption programs that Mike described before, right? In addition to that, the office housed the not-for-profit ombudsperson, as I mentioned. And we can assist with a bunch of matters here at Department of Finance that taxpayers have issues with, right? So we can assist with New York City business tax and excise taxes, so if you're a business owner and you have concerns, property taxes, exemptions, abatements, and as we mentioned, the rent freeze program, right? So if you have already tried to resolve your problem with Department of Finance, right, below is a list of guidelines to consider before contacting OTA. And the reason why I say, to consider before contacting OTA is because we do not want to be the first stop on your, on your adventure to resolving your matter with DOF, right? We intentionally want to be your last stop because we want to give the agency an opportunity, or those applicable units that you would need to contact or that you're trying to reach out to, an opportunity to resolve the issue that you're bringing to their attention, right? So as the first bullet here explains, you've made a reasonable attempt to resolve your inquiry or complaint with the Department of Finance. Your inquiry or complaint has not been fixed, or you have not received a timely response, right? In addition to that, a couple other things to consider. You believe you can show that the Department of Finance is applying the tax laws, regulations, or policy unfairly, incorrectly, and or have injured or will injure your taxpayer bill of rights, right? So to give a quick little example, Mike mentioned all of those exemption programs that you might apply for, right? So say you got denied for one of these programs, and you believe that DOF calculated your income incorrectly, right? They counted something that should not have been counted. So let's make so you can come to our office, after you've tried to resolve this. We will review all the details that you provide, your income, and all the documents, and we'll run this against the policy and the laws of how the application is to be processed. And if we come to find that the numbers don't match, right, then we'll definitely advocate on your behalf to say that, hey, we think that these values, per how it's delineated in the tax laws, are not correct, right? In addition, you might face a threat of immediate harmful action. So when we think about this, we're thinking about folks who might be, at risk of the lien sale, right? Getting your lien sold. So at those junctures, definitely, we can be the first stop that you might reach out to. You face a threat of immediate harmful action. So once again, thinking of the lien sale, you have a tax warrant against you levied because of business taxes or so on and so forth. Or you believe you can show that you will suffer damage that is beyond repair, a long-term harmful impact if your relief is not granted, right? In the continuation of that, right, how we assist with those matters is that OTA will work with you to best achieve a resolution that's within the tax law. If necessary, we will determine which areas of DOF to speak with, and we will be an intermediary between you and the applicable unit that needs to be communicated with to make sure that there isn't any loss in translation or nothing is dropped, so that the matter that you've been trying to resolve, either it be for weeks or sometimes it can be months, does come to a satisfactory conclusion for all parties involved, right? And in lieu of working on the myriad of cases or items that a taxpayer might bring to us, right? We might notice that there are things that are a trend or things that are keep on occurring that should not be occurring, right? And we can think of those things as being systemic issues, right? Or recurring trends. And so OTA has a mandate that we can recommend policy changes and requests for action by the Department of Finance on behalf of our taxpayers, right? And so when thinking about that, we actually put out a list of recommendations every year. And here on this slide, there are a couple links where you can go and you can check out our annual reports at the Office of the Taxpayer Advocate, where you can get a glance of the kind of work that we do throughout a fiscal year. You see the cases we work on, how we've worked to resolve them, and also to see the policy recommendations that we have set forth that we would like to be addressed by DOF throughout the fiscal year that precedes the OTA report, right? So how do you request for help from the Office of the Taxpayer Advocate? So what I'll do is that I'll share a link in this chat along with my email for the NFP Ombuds, where you can directly reach out to the NFP Ombuds for assistance or help, right? Or this link that I'll also share will bring you to a portal on our website for the Taxpayer Advocate, where one, you can read more about our office and gain some details about who we are and how we work. But also it will contain links on how to contact us. So there will be a link for the NFP Ombuds. There will be a link for the SCREE Ombuds. There will be a link for the DRE Ombuds, as well as there will be a link for the Case Advocates Ombuds, right? So depending on your matter, you will contact one of these folks, and we'll get the inquiry, and we'll be able to assist you with those matters, right? In addition to that, if you can't hop online or get to a computer, what we do have is that folks can either contact 311 and request for an inquiry to be sent to the Office of the Taxpayer Advocate, or the other option is to fax us a narrative of the issue that you're having to our fax number that's provided here, which is 646-500-6907. And, we can go ahead and open an inquiry or a case and then reach out to you to gather further details in regards to how we can assist here at the Office of the Taxpayer Advocate. So in short, what I want to say is that, we're a resource here at DOF, right? So if you have questions, you have concerns, you've been trying to resolve your tax matters with DOF, please come to us. We're a part of this system where we want to ensure that, at DOF, we're providing, exemplary customer service, right? And how we do that is by, definitely helping our folks to resolve the issues that they need resolving. So with that, I will pass it back to Kate, and I'll be on the chat if anyone has questions that I can just respond there to you guys and provide our contact information. Actually, sorry, I need to pass it off to Ted.
Thanks, Marcel. Thanks everyone for being here. It's a pleasure to be here as well. I wish I had studied French better when I was in school so that I could present this actually in French. But and again, if you do have questions, just put them into the chat and then we can respond to that. And I will put the contact that you can reach us in my organization. My name's Ted Oberman. I'm the Director of Commercial Exemptions and Abatements. Part of my job is managing not-for-profit exemptions, and that's what I'm going to be talking about here. Not-for-profit exemptions are granted for properties that meet a two-pronged test. The property must be owned completely and wholly by a not-for-profit organization, and the property must be used for one or more exempt purposes. Examples of exempt purposes are religious activities, hospital, educational, charitable, benevolent, and so on. These categories are listed in New York State real property tax law, and the sections are 420A and 420B. There are a number of religious activities that would qualify for an exemption. These include religious services, religious education, youth ministry, holiday events, marriage preparation and counseling, etc. To obtain a not-for-profit exemption from property taxes, the owner or its representative must file an application with the Department of Finance. Exemptions are not granted automatically when you purchase a property. There is an application online which can be filled out, scanned, and sent to DOF. It can also be mailed if you choose. Along with the application, the owner should also send in the articles of incorporation for the organization, if they exist, the bylaws, a copy of the deed, the organization's federal tax exempt status, again, if it exists, and most importantly, a detailed use of the property. Religious organizations are not required to obtain federal tax exempt status, also known as 501c3, as they are presumed to have that status by their structure. DOF can also grant exemptions if a property is not currently being used for an exempt purpose, but is contemplated for exempt use in the foreseeable future. To obtain an NFP exemption for what is called contemplated use, the owner should, in addition to the information listed above, provide detailed plans for the development of the property. These could include DOB, Department of Building Construction permits, architectural or engineering plans, proof of a building fund, and board resolutions authorizing the development. If an exemption for contemplated use is granted, the owner must demonstrate annually that continual progress is being made towards the final use of the property. Once construction is complete, the owner will submit a new application detailing the actual use of the property. DOF grants exemptions for housing only when it is in furtherance of the underlying mission of the organization. Examples of this would include student or faculty housing for a school, housing for doctors working at a hospital, the officiating clergy and caretaker of a house of worship, and housing where supportive services are provided on site. There are a number of activities that do not qualify for a not-for-profit exemption, even if the property is owned by a not-for-profit organization. These include renting to a commercial entity, renting to another not-for-profit organization, and making more in income than is spent on maintenance and depreciation of the property, and using the property for housing for other purposes than those I just listed. To keep an exemption, an organization must file an annual renewal with DOF and indicate if there are any changes in the nature of the organization or the use of the property. Exemptions can start as of the date of deed, provided that the property was purchased after August 2007. This is the result of a change in the New York state law. Owners should submit an application as soon as possible after purchasing the property. If DOF receives an application within a year of the deed date, we will generally grant an application, if it's approved, retroactively to the purchase date. If an application is received later than that, the applicant must provide proof of the exempt activities that occurred on the property to be approved retroactively to the deed date. Applications for properties that were purchased prior to August 2007 and those that do not demonstrate exempt use prior to the filing of the application will only be granted to the date the application was received. Exemptions can cancel property taxes from the date of deed. They cannot cancel property taxes that were imposed prior to the date that that the NFP organization purchased the property. This means that if the prior owner did not pay charges and your organization bought the property with them, you are responsible for these charges. Additionally, external agency charges, such as sidewalk repair, Department of Health inspection fees, cleanup fees from the Department of Sanitation or the Department of Health, or any other external agency charges are not covered by the exemption, and they are the responsibility of the owner to pay. A full not-for-profit exempt property is not required to file the real property income and expense statements, but a property that is partially exempt must do so. Business Improvement District charges, also called bid charges, are usually waived for fully exempt NFP properties, but that is the discretion of the individual bid, not DOF. A property can receive a partial exemption if a portion of the property is unused or used for a non-exempt activity, such as being rented to a commercial tenant. DOF calculates partial exemptions based on the square footage that is unused or rented. Usually at this point, if people have more questions than that I can go over. So I'm happy to turn it back and answer anything that comes up. Thank you very much.
We'll just give a moment for the interpretation side to catch up to our side. Once again, if you have questions and you put them in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, we will momentarily be going through those questions to provide information for you. And we'll just give a moment for Kate to be able to come back on and sort of orchestrate us through that portion of the presentation.
There is a question that's in the Q&A, if anyone has an answer to that, which is, our mosque has lost revenue due to closings. Our kids are no longer learning in the mosque. How can the city help us be able to open and pay our mosque staff? Does anyone have any thoughts on this?
That seems to be, other than a tax question, regarding, this seems to be more related towards COVID benefits and the like. So as for the Department of Finance, I know we wouldn't weigh in on that. I don't know if anyone else on the call would have information regarding that.
This is some of the work that Bricks and Mortals does do in terms of diversifying revenue and finding new tenants for people that own their buildings. I think, this is something that we can speak with the person who wrote this further. But in general, finding another tenant to replace the school that was there would be a first way to think about it, or renting out the building are two general options in response to that. And I think that Ted wrote an answer also in the chat.
Ted, would you like to share with us if you have additional comment?
I just wrote the not-for-profit mailbox for the Department of Finance. So that it is not-for-profit, one word, at finance.nyc.gov. No, I'm sorry, I that's a little above my pay grade. So.
All right. That would be, it sounds like that would involve services other than the type of tax things that we're discussing here, first and foremost. But between New York City and New York State, they should look into that and see what's available. Kate, are you seeing anything else in the Q&A that, even if we have written an answer, maybe we can reiterate some of those, because some of the answers may apply to folks that they didn't write it, but they would like to know anyway.
Mr. Michael, I think there's two people in the attendee section that raised their hand. I'm assuming that they want to ask a question. It's Honest and Bakari Kamara. I think they can unmute themselves and ask the question if they would like to.
Yes, this is Bakari Kamara.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. My question is on a couple of areas. First of all, to introduce myself just a little bit, I am a realtor. I do real estate sales and buying full-time. That's my full-time job.
Your question, sir?
And we've been involved in trying to purchase facilities to avoid renting. And it's been very, very difficult. Not only with the city, but with the banks. Really, it's very difficult with the banks. But I know we were dealing with the city and the tax exemption. One particular property, one particular entity on 168, we've had a chance to purchase one two-family house next to the masjid. We purchased it now going on 3 or 4 years. But we weren't able to get a tax exemption. We are raising funds a little bit at a time and trying to when I approached the city to at least get the tax exemption part of it so that the savings we're trying to make to be able to accumulate enough money to renovate will be realized. It was utterly impossible. They asked for whatever document they asked me. We sent them all in. And at the end, what they wanted me to do is to go and have a video conference where they could see the facility, how it looked. I show everything. And then a day after that, a couple of days after that, I got an email denying us the tax exemption because they're saying that it has to be already renovated and ready to be used as prayer hall or something like that.
So
But
your question,
in the meantime, we're paying $6,000 taxes that is getting in the way of us being able to raise money and renovate the place. Is there a way that this, as a not-for-profit, as long as the property is owned by us, is not ready for use yet, that we could get a tax exemption?
all right. Let me just repeat to
So
make
can I
sure
check?
that I'm clear on just to make sure I'm clear on the question. You have a property that you've purchased and you need to have it renovated or worked on for its not-for-profit purpose or use. It's not there yet. And you're paying taxes without an exemption. So you want to know, is there any way that you can have the exemption in the meantime? Is that?
Yeah, and it's fully owned by the tax exempt corporation.
All right, I think, Ted, is this in your wheelhouse?
It is. So generally, in what I tried to explain, we can grant an exemption for what's called contemplated use. However, you have to demonstrate that you will be using the property in the foreseeable future. And this is done because there was a long period of time where not-for-profits owned property and then didn't do anything with them. And of course, the issue is that neighborhoods, they become eyesores in the neighborhood. The not-for-profit corporation, because it's not required to actually renovate and do something with the property, holds on. Sometimes, not in your case, but sometimes they're just looking to sell the property to a bidder. So the standard we use is called the foreseeable future. It's actually a legal standard in terms of exemptions. Doesn't mean that it has to be tomorrow. It doesn't mean it has to be specifically in 3 years. But what it means is that there is a plan. And then that plan, which we review on an annual basis, once you have an exemption, you're working towards that. So if you submitted an application to us and there were no plans, there were no permits, there were no architectural or engineering firms, there's no board resolution, there's no building funds, we're not going to grant an exemption because we don't really have confidence that you can actualize, you can get this project done. I know that this is a bit of a difficulty, it's a significant difficulty, because some people buy property and then they want to renovate it, but they don't have the resources, and the taxes just make that harder. But we do, this is the standard, and it is very uniformly applied throughout the city. So I think when we asked for the video inspection, we wanted to determine if there was any current use, since you hadn't demonstrated contemplated use, so that we could grant the exemption. I don't really know how to answer the question, except that once you have some sort of proof that you are really making steps towards getting this property ready, then we can certainly grant a contemplated use exemption.
Yeah, if I may follow up, is it okay?
Sure, of course.
Okay. In our case, all of the above is present except the funds to rebuild. What we purchased was, in a sense, a property that was not in conformity. It was, it needed a lot of, it needed stabilization of foundation. That part we're working on right now. And we have the architecturals, we have the plan, we have all that. And I submitted those. We don't have funds, building funds, to build it up. But once the DOB clear us from all the violations, which are all cleared now, and the foundation is stabilized and everything else is done. Once those is clear, our next step will be to renovate. In the meantime, the $6,000 annually is really, really, really paralyzing us.
So did you have did you have a class 1 violation? Yeah, did you have a class 1 violation on the property?
I don't know what a class 1 violation is. What is that?
Like a stop work order or something where there was a hazardous immediate response required. That's usually what class 1 violations are. If that's the case, okay. So what I would say is, I think you have the not-for-profit email, and you have Marcel Dixon's email as well. I would send that information. He's from the Office of the Taxpayer Advocate. He's the person for not-for-profits.
Mr. Kamara, I was just about to send you a message to ask for the BPL, but what you should do is just send me an email and I'll review, and also send me the letter. We'll see, and then we can provide you with more clear information as what your next step should be. If there's been changes since you previously applied, if you can.
Is that Famudu?
Can I be heard?
Marcel Dixon.
Okay,
Marcel,
great.
your information is in the chat, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in the
Yeah,
chat.
everything is in the chat.
Just send me an email with all your details, the property details. We'll review and get back to you with the more one-on-one discussion.
Great. I will follow up with that. If I'm not taking too much of your time, the other difficulty with the properties that the masjids are trying to purchase is the funding part of it. You want to purchase on the not-for-profit corporation. The amount of funds you have to accumulate in order to be able to do that is paramount. Most of them can't afford that. For example, you're purchasing a property that's $1.5 million. And for you to be able to put it in the name of the not-for-profit at very onset, you would have to require to put down 35%. And most of them don't have that 35%. And in a sense, not having that, not being able to purchase, we have masjids that are paying $5,000 to $10,000 a month in rents and expenses that could be very, very low if we're able to purchase our own properties. Is there any idea, any incentive in that area that you could share with us?
For purchasing properties? You mean for providing funds to purchase properties?
Not providing funds, but
if I may interrupt for just a
making
second, we have some background noise. I just encourage everyone, please, to mute if you're not presenting information. There's some background noise that's sort of preventing us from hearing this gentleman clearly. So if you could just kindly mute your microphones if you're not presenting. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, in a sense, what I'm talking about is that the organization have individuals who could guarantee the loan to purchase a property. However, when that happens, it's almost impossible now to render this property to be not-for-profit unless it's paid off and be given to the corporation as either gift or something else. How do we work around this?
I only know that I don't know all of the financing mechanisms because that's not really the job for me to grant an exemption. What I do know is that a property must be wholly and completely owned by a not-for-profit corporation. So there's certainly a number of law firms that might be able to assist you. I can't recommend any, but there are what they're called tax certiorari firms, and they might be able to do pro bono work to assist. Maybe Bricks and Mortals might be able to put you in touch with people. I'm not sure, but I can't really speak as to how someone should structure their financial arrangements for this.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Ted, and thank you, sir, for those questions. I'm sure there are others on the line that benefited from that information as well. What else do you see in the Q&A that needs to be addressed or could be addressed for the audience? Can someone lean in and just give me a little assistance with that? I'm not the best on that side. Are there any more questions that we haven't addressed?
It looks like in the Q&A, there's a question that says, a house of worship with 501c3 status has an area in the building that can be rented. Would it be necessary to have partial exemptions on that space? I hope I'm understanding that question correctly.
I think I understand it. So I think what they're asking is, if they were to rent that portion of the property, would that become taxable and the building would no longer be wholly, or the property would no longer be wholly exempt, but partially exempt? The answer to that is, it depends. If you rent to a commercial entity, say Starbucks or McDonald's or whatever, then the property, that portion of the property would become taxable. If you rent to another qualifying not-for-profit organization, that would be an organization that, if it applied, would qualify in its own right, and you made no income on that portion of the property, meaning no net income, meaning if you, let's say the rent for that property was $5,000 a month, but your maintenance and depreciation of that property, of that portion of the property, was $5,000, then you would not have to pay tax on that. If, however, you rent it to a not-for-profit organization and you charge them more in rent than the maintenance and depreciation, then you would have to pay. So two things: renting to a commercial entity would make you taxable, renting to another not-for-profit and charging more than your maintenance and depreciation would also make you taxable.
Ted, can I ask a follow-up question on that? So
Sure.
In a case like that, when they're applying for the exemption, what would they provide
Submit.
to show you, for you to be able to determine or to make that determination?
Well, they would provide the information for the renter. So I would need the same information: the articles of incorporation, the bylaws, 501c3 status if it had it, the use of the property. And then I would need a copy of the lease. And then they would provide to us a list of expenses and depreciation. And then we would compare the two. If there's no net income, then we would grant a full exemption. If there was net income, then it would be a partial exemption. And it would be partial based on the amount of square footage that was being rented. Meaning, if it's a 20,000 foot building and 2,000 square feet were being rented, they would get, which was not exempt, they would get a 90% exemption. And they would have to pay taxes on 10%.
That list that they provide, is it a part of any tax return or simply part of their accounting information?
So the 990 has information about this. We generally don't use the 990 because it shows profits when a profit may not actually exist. What we do is they would submit this information. They would just have to compile the information about maintenance and expenses and depreciation. So, for example, what many places do is they take their total expenses and they provide it to us with the square footage that's being rented. We simply take 10% of their total expenses, and that becomes the basis that we use. Depreciation is a slightly different formula. It's based on it's based on a couple of things. I don't really want to give too much advice about it, but it has to do with the purchase price of the building and a 27.5-year scale where you're allowed to depreciate the assets as you're doing that. So let's say you bought a building for $2 million, you're renting 10% of it, you would take $200,000 and you would divide that by 27.5, and that would be your depreciation on an annual basis. That's a very sort of basic way of thinking about depreciation.
Well, thanks for the additional information, Ted. Kate or Ali, are you seeing anything else that we haven't covered there?
I don't see anything, but final call for other questions.
Kid, I think we have somebody in the attendee section. I think Anna's Black's mom. I think she has raised her hand. I don't know if she has a question to ask.
Agnes?
I guess we could proceed.
Did anyone else have a question? Please feel free to put it in the Q&A or raise your hand and we can take them.
My hand keeps raising. I don't mean to raise.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And just to mention that Bricks and Mortals, speaking about the question before, can also work with congregations or others who are looking to move from a rental space to a more permanent space, to strategize on the best ways to do that. So please reach out to us to have those conversations, or if you own a space and are looking to find renters for those spaces also. I put our emails in the chat and they'll also be on the last slide. If there are no other questions, we can move to our conclusion. Do any of the panelists have final thoughts before Ali, I pass it to him?
Yeah, I do not have any question. I just want to thank everybody, all the partners, and I also want to thank all the attendees as well for attending this event. I think I did a really good job in sharing these necessary information, and I will stop here. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thanks everyone for coming, and thank you all for joining us today and for sharing your knowledge also. We hope this was really helpful. Please be in touch with any of the offices that were posted in the chat, or with Bricks and Mortals or the Muslim Community Network, the contact information we just shared. Thank you so much.